Hey, what's up everybody? This is Osterberg501 and today I want to go over one of the new features coming to Tiny Tina's Wonderlands that I think has the most potential. And this new feature is called the Overworld and it's described like this. Feast your eyes on the Overworld, Tina's painstakingly crafted representation of the Wonderlands in tabletop form. Bask in the beauty of those rolling hills, majestic mountains, individually painted trees, and tiny breakable crates. Never mind any half-eaten cheese puffs, exposed bits of styrofoam, or willy-nilly push pins. Those are all crucial to the structural integrity of the game board. They're not improvised materials, they're immersion. The Overworld is an expansive map that connects the many hotspots of the Wonderlands. When you're not engaged in first-person combat or exploring new areas up close, you'll get a third-person bird's-eye view of the land in the Overworld, complete with your Fate Maker looking like the coolest bobblehead there ever was, handled with care, as there's no telling what Tina will do if you break one of her oh so precious miniatures. If you dare to venture off the beaten path in the Overworld, you can find all kinds of goodies, including extra chests full of gold, hidden collectibles like lucky dice, and pieces of a buff granting shrines, and even entirely optional areas with their own quest lines. But watch out, because you might catch the attention of an enemy itching for a random encounter. If you're not in the mood to fight, you can simply run away or punch out your attacker before they reach you, but there's loot to be had if you bravely choose to fight the random encounter head on. So the Overworld is essentially trying to put the tabletop aspect of games like Dungeons and Dragons into the game itself. So it gives you a third-person view, your characters have big bobbleheads, and you walk around on the board not actually doing direct combat, but walking around exploring, finding hidden paths to find additional chests, having random encounters, or finding the new areas you're going to. So instead of just going up to the spot that you would enter a new area like you do in all the other Borderlands games, it will essentially take you to this tabletop game every time you want to go through different areas. And we're not sure if there's going to be a way to skip the tabletop games, say when you're in the end game to try to get to while you're trying to farm quicker, or if you have an option in that. But besides just trying to go to the next area you're trying to go to, there's a bunch of other stuff you could potentially find. New chests, random encounters, different areas with side quests in them, or things of that nature. And I think that the Overworld has the potential to be the shining feature of Tiny Tina's Wonderlands. There is so many different things you can do with a system like this. And I think especially the ability to add new smaller bits of content through this system can add some massive replayability, and they can add some really cool things, even in much smaller amounts if they want to do that. And I think the first thing is the random encounters. So you can randomly encounter different enemies, possibly bosses. I don't think they've specifically mentioned if there would be boss or not, but different random combat encounters with different enemies or whatever it may be. And you can choose to either run away, punch them out, or actually go into the fight, which will take you back into the normal gameplay mode, fight those enemies, and get whatever loot they have. Now, the ability to add additional content through this random encounter system is actually pretty massive. They could potentially just have an update that adds a few more random encounters of new enemies, or testing out new enemies, or even adding brand new bosses in there, tying in holiday events in game to some random encounters or different things like that. And they could have the potential of adding really rare random encounters that are incredibly rare to get, but then also could give some super unique reward, like some special legendary that you can only get in a random encounter, or a different skin that you can only get in that encounter, or something like that. And even going past that, they could have the potential to have rare bosses come through there. So you could just have rare normal bosses that aren't like super hard end game stuff, that are just cool bosses to find. You could have like encounters with loot goblins. You could even go Diablo 3 style and have a random encounter that's just like a full arena filled with loot goblins, or something like that would be much more rare. And then even going past that, with this game specifically having content built for the end game on launch, they could potentially have like raid bosses or raid boss versions of different bosses or different enemies as random encounters. and this would add a ton of flavor and a ton of variety to the gameplay, especially once you get into the end game and just start farming for better and better items. And then they also mention there being hidden collectibles like lucky dice and pieces of buff granting shrines. So there's a bunch more potential in that because they could have hidden collectible things just everywhere, and they could easily add more of these and just have them in random areas that maybe everybody would miss. Then someone finds one and it's some new collectible, or they could just randomly add new collectibles without even telling anybody, and then someone finds this new collectible that nobody's ever seen. There could be tons of stuff for that. They could keep adding new versions of these buff shrines that you could find that could give you new cool buffs that could even change up the gameplay, or add some ridiculous buffs like all enemies you kill explode into loot, or enemies you kill just explode into piles of gold, or whatever else they wanted to do with those. Now there's also a system of optional areas you can go to that have their own quest lines in them, and these are kind of going to be the optional paths you could go in Borderlands with the side quests. They'd sometimes take you into different areas you didn't go to when going through the main quests. And I think this also has a potential to be incredibly cool. So just past the fact that since these are going to be split up a little bit, they could add these new side quest areas much more easily without having to have them in a big DLC. You could just add one small side quest area if they wanted to tell some cool story or some character's side story or something like that. But then they could also have the possibility of having more secret quest lines or more Easter egg type side areas, because it would be a really cool addition if they started to add these more secret and hard to find side areas that maybe have a secret quest line, or maybe just have some hidden Easter egg that's really hard to find, or has something really cool hidden away in this side path that you could potentially have to do a bunch of different little things in the world to go unlock. And this is a little bit more out there, but the main thing I was thinking about when talking about like Easter eggs and stuff is a lot of the Battlefield games have had these big Easter eggs where you have to go press this button on this side of the map, and then it unlocks something else you have to go press, and then you have to go shoot this thing on the other side of the map, and you have to do a bunch of these small things that are super hard to find and sometimes take months or even years to find these Easter eggs, and then you get something really cool to happen. Like one of the Easter eggs for one of the Battlefield games was a massive megalodon jumps out of the sea, and they could potentially have cool stuff like that for Borderlands. But since it's a loot driven game, they could have these really cool big Easter eggs. You have to go through different sections of the maps and do these different things, but they could give a cool unique reward at the end of that, so it even adds on to players wanting to find these hidden Easter eggs. And there's a ton of additional stuff they could do with a system like this. But my main hope for a system like this is that it allows the developers to give us a lot more additional content for this game. I think Borderlands in general has kind of been stuck in the past with only having these pretty much story-driven DLCs. Borderlands 3 did do a little bit more to add new content outside of the DLCs and then try to do some additional stuff past Season 1. But I would definitely like to see them go more in a games as a service route. I know people don't really like that title, but it's essentially just having a more updated game that continues to get new content more frequently and for a longer time in the game's life. But that's pretty much all I want to go over with the Overworld system for Tiny Tina's Wonderlands. So subscribe if you want to see more Tiny Tina's Wonderlands or other videos. Leave a like if you liked the video. Leave a comment down below what you guys think about the Overworld system, and thanks for watching.